This exhaust is so ridiculously loud. The four-wheel drive system in this truck. Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, we're going to be doing a driving comparison between a 2020 Ford Raptor and a 2021 Ram TRX. I know we have this Raptor here in the middle, but this one's not part of the video. It's just sitting there looking pretty. But first and foremost, a huge shout out and thank you to the Larry Miller Ford Lincoln here in Provo for giving me some time with this Raptor. Check out the inventory link below. Let's get straight into the driving. Well, let's talk about visibility before we set off here in the Raptor. So first off, visibility over the hood's just like pretty much any other truck. It's cool to see the venting. And then there's your visibility through both mirrors. They do have blind spot monitoring. And then here's throughout the rest of the rear of the Raptor. So from a visibility perspective, it's solid. And that all being said, let's set off. We are setting off here in the Raptor, and the first thing I want to mention here with the Raptor is you can definitely like tell that it feels, you know, a little bit smaller, well, not a little bit, quite a bit smaller than the TRX. Definitely just has this kind of like lighter feel. It kind of also just, because it feels lighter, it kind of feels a little bit less planted than the TRX. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just kind of the feel that you get with the truck. And yeah, it's so weird being back in my old Raptor after driving the TRX for like the last, it's been just over a week now. Yeah, definitely kind of a weird experience, but let's actually get up and going here with the Raptor. So first off, let's talk about the ride quality and the road noise with the Raptor, and then we'll compare it to the TRX. So let's go over these little bumps. Yeah, it doesn't really upset the truck. The truck's actually pretty planted, and I mean, that's a huge part to the Fox shocks. The Fox shocks here on the Raptor are absolutely fantastic, and then turn in on the truck feels so light. Like, it's crazy. Going from the TRX to this truck, it's crazy how light and agile this feels. Like, yeah, you really, like, you can really feel the weight difference between both of them. And the other thing to mention is the steering feels maybe a little bit more precise, but it's not that much. They're both pretty similar. Now let's pop it over into the sport mode, and then we'll pop it over into the manual mode as well and get some manual shifts. And by the way, this Raptor with the Corsa exhaust 100% is louder than the TRX. Like, there's no argument with that. Like, after revving them and everything, yes, the TRX sounds great with the V8. I love the V8 sounds, but this is definitely louder. Like, this exhaust is so ridiculously loud. Well, we don't really get traction because there's a bunch of water, and again, that's due to the two-wheel drive, right? The Raptor has two-wheel drive, so you can have a little bit more fun with this truck. Obviously, it's gonna be easier to do donuts, all that kind of stuff. Man, that's like the slowest turn in the history of slow turns. But yeah, that's a huge benefit there to that system. Now, if we pop it over into four-wheel auto here, we're gonna let this person go by first. That is gonna change the dynamics of stuff. Go Jimmy John's driver, go deliver that $5 sandwich, whatever it is. But when we put it into four-wheel auto, it feels a little bit different than the four-wheel auto with the TRX. This four-wheel auto system seems like it pretty much sends all the power to the rear wheels, and then as soon as you slip out, you can kind of really feel, whereas the TRX seems like it still sends some power to the front wheels. So the system does feel a little bit different between both of the trucks from that perspective. And in terms of the gear shifts, they're both pretty similar. Like, the shift speeds feel pretty much the same between both of the trucks. The paddles on this truck definitely are easier to access compared to the TRX because they're a lot bigger. So that's definitely a plus with the Raptor. Now, in terms of the throttle response, so since this is turbocharged, I almost try to mix both the words together. Since this is turbocharged instead of supercharged, you do get a little bit of turbo lag. You don't get as much immediacy with the throttle response. And then obviously it's not as fast. Like the TRX 700 horsepower definitely feels significantly faster than this truck, but it's definitely a different feeling with both of the trucks. The one thing that I would comment on though is it seems like this power is easier to use because of how light this truck is, and then also with the braking as well. And I mentioned this in my Shelby Raptor review. This definitely feels like it brakes a lot better compared to the TRX because it's so much lighter. So for my driving impressions with the Raptor and driving my old Raptor back to back with my new TRX, what I'd have to say is this truck definitely feels smaller, feels lighter on its feet. It's slower. You've got the two-wheel drive, so it's obviously kind of goes all over the place, especially in rainy weather like this. You can have a little bit more fun with it on the off-road with that two-wheel drive. The four-wheel auto in this truck feels a little bit more intrusive than the TRX. The TRX seems like it's kind of sending some power to the rear and then, well, most of the power to the rear and then some to the front, so it kind of like balances out, whereas this is like all rear, and then as soon as you slip out, then the system's like, oh crap, we got to use the front wheels, and then it kind of like jumps in, is the feeling I get with the Raptor. And yeah, so like overall, it's just, they're very similar, but then they're also very different at the same time. This is kind of like your lightweight, fun vehicle. And I feel like you could compare like the Ford Mustang and Challenger with the Raptor and the TRX. So like the Mustang is a lighter weight, less powerful car that corners a little bit better, whereas the Challenger is a heavier car, has a little bit more power. Again, depending on the engine option you get, has a little bit more power, kind of more of a GT cruiser. That's kind of what the Raptor and the TRX are like. Do you want the lighter, less powerful, kind of more nimble on its feet truck, or do you want the heavier but more powerful, kind of more GT type vehicle? And that's kind of the differentiation. But let's go drive the TRX now. Talk about visibility here in the TRX before we set off. So you've got the visibility of the hood, which is pretty similar to the Raptor. The hood in the middle, or the middle portion of the hood, does pop up a bit, and then you've got the really cool venting, and then there's your visibility through both mirrors. They also have blind spot monitoring just like the Raptor, and then here's all throughout the rest of the rear. And even though this has the redneck ram bar and the tire carrier, they really don't get in the way of visibility. And that all being said, let's set off. Well, we are setting off in the TRX, and we're gonna do the same route as the Raptor, so you guys can kind of see how the truck handles on the same route versus a stock Raptor. And first off, when you get into the truck, like I said, it definitely feels larger, definitely feels more substantial, and that actually helps out with the ride quality of the TRX. So with the Raptor, both of them, when you go over stuff, they both kind of like get upset the same amount. Like they don't really get upset at all because the shocks are so good. Like going over this, it's the same as the Raptor feel wise, but because this is larger and heavier, it kind of has this more like planted down feel, whereas the Raptor kind of feels like it bounces, not bounces, that's the wrong word, kind of feels like it just goes around all over the place. So there's a difference there. And again, you can feel the weight. You can definitely feel the difference in weight. And the steering on this is a little bit lighter in the normal mode. If I pop it over into the sport mode, the steering does get a little bit heavier, but it's not nearly as heavy as the Raptor, which, I don't know, I kind of like the heavier steering because it feels just slightly more direct, and it just feels like you're doing something more substantial. Whereas this, I mean, it weights up nicely, but it's just not nearly as much as the Raptor. And yeah, whenever I get out of driving a Raptor and drive a TRX, my TRX after, I always have to like get myself used to the brakes again, because this just doesn't brake as quick as the Raptor, and it's just because it has so much more weight to stop. But we've got this famous Provo traffic here, so I'll be back with you guys in a second. We are going to be getting our acceleration here with the TRX, and like I said, the four-wheel drive system in this truck, crazy. Don't worry, you guys can see, use my turn signal. Some people commented on another video that I accidentally forgot to use my turn signal. Trying to film and accelerate and shift the gears at the same time, sometimes it gets to a lot. And gosh, this definitely feels more blippable compared to the Raptor. When you downshift in the Raptor, sometimes it gets upset. I've noticed supercharged V8s, they're definitely smoother with the downshifts. Yeah, definitely feels faster. There's way more immediacy with the throttle response as well with the TRX. And that four-wheel drive system, I don't know, I feel like in four-wheel auto, it just feels like it hooks up better with the TRX. I feel like Ram almost spent more time with their system than Ford did, because it just seems like it's a little bit more seamless compared to the Raptor, and it actually gives me more confidence. Like when the road's kind of wet like this, I am completely okay with just full throttle all the time with the TRX, whereas with the Raptor, when I was in four-wheel auto, I kind of feel a little bit weird. And then obviously you don't want to have the truck in four-wheel high all the time, especially at high speeds, because it wears down on the driveline and everything. And so it's, yeah, the Raptor definitely, I just didn't have as much confidence in weather like this, which I'm not saying it's a bad truck. It's just this drive, the four-wheel drive system in this seems to be a little bit more advanced. But that'll actually get me to summing things up pretty much for this video. So, from an exterior aesthetics perspective, the Raptor definitely has kind of like the more aggressive, like boxy design, whereas this is kind of more rounded off. As you guys saw in my walk around video, this truck definitely sits a little bit higher than the Raptor, so it's got a little bit more height, a little bit more road presence from that perspective. And then as for the rest of the exterior, I feel like that's just up to preference. I like both of them. I think they're both good looking trucks in different respects. Interior perspective, this definitely has more of a luxury interior, but for $20,000 more, I'd hope it has a nicer interior. And then in terms of the driving, so again, I'm going to get an off-road comparison with the Raptor versus the TRX. Don't worry, that's coming. I actually have plans to do a Shelby Raptor versus the TRX, and then also a regular Raptor versus the TRX off-road. Both of those videos should do really awesome, and I think you guys will appreciate it. But as an on-road truck, if we do not look at off-road capability whatsoever, we just look at these trucks side by side as daily driver on-road vehicles. The TRX feels smoother, feels more substantial, has a better acceleration. It does have worse fuel economy though, so I mean that does get in the way of being a daily driver. But when I get in the TRX, I feel like I'm driving and living inside of a luxury vehicle. When I get in the Raptor, I feel like I'm inside of an off-road truck that's pretty nice. That's the biggest difference between both these trucks, is the TRX just feels nicer, it feels more luxury, whereas the Raptor feels kind of more like one purposed, where it's like this really cool off-road truck that you can, you know, you can basically make it so that you're like, okay, I'll concede a little bit so that I could use this as a daily driver. Whereas this, I feel like I don't concede anything. I feel like this is a really good daily driver. It's very comfortable, everything looks nice, and every time I get in this truck, like, it feels like a special occasion. The Raptor, it felt like that to an extent, but like the luxury just isn't there. So if I'm going to give one truck a win over the other, as an on-road vehicle, the TRX is the better vehicle, but let's see in future videos if it's a better off-road vehicle. Now that is going to sum things up for our driving comparison between this 2020 Ford Raptor and this 2021 Ram TRX. And again, a huge shout out and thank you to the Larry Miller Ford Lincoln here in Provo for giving me some time with the Raptor. Again, check out the inventory link below. I'll see all of you in the next video.